Hey guys, it's Joe for Gaming Curious, and today I'm going to show you everything you need to know about Valorant's general settings menu. We will begin by the accessibility section. This section will let you change the language of the text in the game and also the enemy highlight color, taking into consideration 3 types of color blindness. That's a pretty cool feature from Riot. Next up, we got the mouse section, where we will be able to adjust our sensitivity in our aim, which we can go as low as 0.01 or even as high as 10, which is kinda ridiculous. But one cool thing about this aiming sensitivity setting is that Riot gives us these 3 decimal points, so we can have some fine adjustment in this setting for people like us who will be kinda picky on how much we want to granulate that sensitivity. That's pretty cool from Riot. Next up, we also got some scope sensitivity multiplier, which is basically the amount it increases or even decreases, which is pretty cool. Like below 1, the sensitivity will decrease from your regular one, or it can actually increase because regularly most of the guns, when you're scoped in, the sensitivity actually goes down. So if you want to keep it like kind of neutral between the states of being scoped in and not scoped out, you can actually have it be neutral if you adjust this slider. I actually prefer just keeping it at 1. And you can also decide to invert the mouse in the y-axis, which I don't really see a case for this, since this is an FPS and not a flying simulator, but you know, awesome to have it there. And the cycle to next previous weapon with the scroll wheel. This is bound to the scroll wheel, and this is probably something most people will actually turn on because, you know, when you scroll in and out, you will, you know, loop through the inventory, that kind of stuff. A lot of people like it. I actually do enjoy it. It's kind of like a tick I already have, but you know, people might enjoy it, some not. Coming up, we got the minimap section, where you can decide if the minimap rotates with the rotation of the player in the game, or have it fixed in place, or if we want the player to always be in the center of the minimap or not, and of course the size of the minimap in our screen, and on how much zoom we have on it, and my personal favorite, toggle division cones, which sometimes may become a bit of a distraction. And for the final section, we got some other miscellaneous settings we can turn on or off, such as being able to see corpses, which we highly recommend turning off since they may hide enemies behind them in certain situations. We can also toggle the mature content if we want to keep Valorant family friendly, or keep the mature spice in the game since Riot has already given it to us. Other option we recommend turning off is the blood. It can easily be a distraction from other moving objects in a big fight, or you can keep it in if you want to keep your game immersion high. And our last worthy item in this section are bullet tracers, which really helps us identify the direction from which we are being fired upon, or even if friendlies are being fired upon. So we pretty much always want to keep this setting turned on. The crosshair settings is actually one of the most important settings in this menu. We will be able to change a lot of the crosshair, even with the dynamics of it, including the size of it, even color. So we will have a quick glance of it over this, but we will have a more in-depth guide later on. So we will begin with the crosshair color, which is pretty straightforward. You will be able to change the color. Outlines. What outlines does is it gives you this contrast over the crosshair, which will have like a black line around the crosshair. You will be able to play with the opacity and the thickness of this. We will be able to change all of this according to your preference. You can also choose if you want a center dot on your crosshair or not, and play with the opacity and thickness as well. Even the fade crosshair, you can have it be with firing error or without it, and even with the movement, which will be go into more detail in another guide, as I said. The inner lines are actually what will be the main crosshair. This will be the setting you will be changing the most and adapting the most, so please take your time and have it be according to your way. You will be able to change the opacity, the length of them. You can go super ridiculous with this, or even go how thick you want it. We actually don't recommend going super thick with this. It will actually occlude some of the game in the most critical part, which is the crosshair, which is the thing that makes you want to aim and be able to aim. And you can actually change pretty easily the movement error or firing error. We actually do recommend straight away to turn those off. They may be a good tool for beginners, but will actually be a huge distraction Maybe something you will say, oh, this won't actually distract me, I know I should focus on objects, but having moving pixels and colors around the side will actually make you aim slower. Your brain will detect them as movement instead of something more important. Yeah, I've made this change and it makes a pretty big difference. And it is the same with the outer lines, which I don't really get, to be honest, why they are there when you have the inner lines. But those are for actually some other guides for beginners, in my opinion. They let you know especially how much spread of the gun will change when you're moving and when you're firing, even more than the inner lines. They're like a more abrupt change in that way. We will also take a look at the general video settings. Firstly, we got the resolution, where we will be able to choose from a variety of resolutions and even different aspect ratios. We will list some of them, which are either 16:9 or 4:3. And why is this important? Because some CSGO pros actually are used to playing in 4:3 aspect ratios instead of 16:9. We will have a more detailed video on that coming up, so why don't you give us a subscribe and toggle on that notification bell so you don't miss it out. You can also change the display mode, either going full screen, windowed full screen, or windowed. This will have little impact on the game, but the major impact it will have is the delay you may actually get from either having it full screen or having it windowed. Full screen is the least delay you will have. And you can also choose a monitor, so you can swap them quickly, and the aspect ratio method, which we can choose between letterbox or fill. The main difference between these ones is that with letterbox, if we choose an aspect ratio in our resolution setting that is different from our native resolution in our monitor, we'll have some black bars in our monitor, which will kind of defeat the purpose of choosing a different aspect ratio. So if we actually choose a 4:3 instead of a 16:9 on a 16:9 monitor, we will want to have it in fill, so we have the complete resolution of it on screen. We can also set some FPS limitations depending if we're running on a battery in a laptop, or in the menus if we don't want it to be super high for no reason while the computer is idling pretty much. You can also limit the FPS so your computer doesn't run super hot in some hot summer days, you know? And we would actually recommend that you limit the FPS on your game that is bound to the refresh rate of your monitor. Most monitors are 60 Hz, and if you don't have a 144 Hz monitor, that's like a really good upgrade. Some other graphics quality settings that we're interested on are actually the VSync, which we usually want to turn this off since we don't really care about the tearing. We're actually kind of looking for the lowest input lag possible, and VSync actually introduces quite a lot of it. Valorant, we actually have it turned off by default, but if you actually don't really enjoy it or it's really tearing apart the image, you can turn it on. Anti-aliasing is something that will have a huge impact on your performance. We have three options: multi-sampling, anti-aliasing 2x and 4x. These are the most expensive versions, or FXAA, which is the fast approximation anti-aliasing, which is some older technology, but it still is some anti-aliasing, which is pretty cool. Or you can actually have none of it if you want the game to run as fast as possible. Anisotropic filtering will also have an important impact in your performance and in the visuals. You could actually have it run as fast as 8x, but I wouldn't go any higher from that. And the distortion and shadows are some effects that you will actually want to turn off since they will be some kind of distraction, especially the distortion one. Shadows may not be that big of a distraction since they are only on the weapon and the arms of your character, not really the shadows on the map, since the map pretty much doesn't cast any new shadows than they are already being drawn. And distortion, it will be pretty expensive effect in some cases, or it can be a pretty big distraction. So yeah, turning off might be a pretty good idea. Well, that is it for this video on our tour of the general settings menu. Remember to give us a like if you enjoyed the video, or if you would like to see a special guide on something you are interested in on a future video, leave us a comment below. This was Joe for Gaming Curious.